Hey everybody, Mike here, and today we got a bit of a different fun video. I don't usually do stuff like this, but the opportunity just presented itself, and I gotta make a video on this. So, just to dive right into it, we all know about the release the Snyder Cut, right? Well, now the same movement is going on with the Rise of Skywalker. But see, the difference here is that the Snyder Cut exists, and we know this because Zack Snyder said it does. The director of Justice League said, yes, it exists. This one, the main source is a random guy on Reddit. And we're going to just dive into this, look at the bullet points and just see what they have to say, and we'll let it just kind of I'll just show you. So, we'll go ahead and skip over the first 5 bullet points, and I'll just summarize it as pretty much Disney. Well, actually, okay. Before I even start on that, we'll go ahead and look at the intro that this guy did. Okay, so since shortly after release weekend, I've been corresponding with someone who worked closely on the production of The Rise of Skywalker and works for one of the major companies I cannot disclose here. I have verified the source to my satisfaction. To protect the source, I am rewording what we spoke about over the last 2 weeks, and I'm submitting it to you in bullet point format I have written based on what they told me. The TLDR is that they were upset with the final product of The Rise of Skywalker and wanted to share their perspective on how it went down and where it went wrong. So this guy has a source who we cannot name, who apparently had, as you'll see, a very large part of the production of The Rise of Skywalker. Now, those first 5 bullet points pretty much just say that the reason that the Rise of Skywalker is considered a mess by some is due to Disney sabotaging their own movie so that they can then ruin J.J. Abrams' reputation. That way, DC, I'm laughing thinking about this, that way DC can then not use J.J. Abrams to their best satisfaction. Thus, DC cannot make a good movie, resulting in Marvel staying on top in the superhero business as far as cinematic universes go. So that's practically the gist of it. Okay, so now moving on. My source mentioned this shortly after the premiere. The Rise of Skywalker we saw last night was not the Rise of Skywalker we thought we worked on. So they were involved with the movie, so remember that going forward. Next bullet point, JJ was devastated and blindsided by this. He's been feeling down over the last 6 months because of some of the ridiculous demands Disney had that changed his movie's story. While the scenes were shot, a lot of the changes were made in post-production, and the audio was re-recorded and altered, which doesn't make sense. What do you mean that the audio was re-recorded and altered? Are we talking about dialogue here? Because if we're talking about dialogue, how can the audio just be altered? That doesn't make sense. My source said that they've never seen anything like this happen before. He's the director, and he wasn't in the know about what they were doing behind his back. See, that is just ridiculous, in my opinion, because who would then be making these creative decisions? Is Bob Iger just like walking in and being like, edit it like this? And I mean, like, I know studios have their own input, but this is a movie is to an extent a director's baby. And then when you have a big movie like this, you do have studio intervention, but I don't understand how you can just have studio heads just making changes without the director knowing. That doesn't make sense. Come on now. Continuing here. Apparently JJ felt threatened over the month leading up to the premiere. Some just random stuff. Rian Johnson was never meant to do episode 9 despite some rumors that he was. Whatever. JJ was brought back by Iger, not Kathleen Kennedy. Disney insisted on more fan service and less controversy. My bad. JJ's original agreement when he signed on was indicating he would have way more creative control than he did on The Force Awakens. It became evident that this wasn't the case only a couple of weeks into shooting when the trouble with meddling started. I mean, I guess that part, who knows, but I'm just looking at everything else, it just doesn't stack up to this being a credible source. Next, I lost my spot here. Okay, this one I do find funny. JJ wanted to do some scenes he thought were important, but Disney shut it down, citing budgetary reasons. Okay, so the director thinks a scene is important, but Disney says no because of budget. And this is Disney, the studio that made over $10 billion in the box office in 2019. And the director says the scene is important, but the Disney studio heads are like, no, it's too expensive. What could possibly be that expensive? I don't understand this. So in May of 2019, JJ argued that those scenes were crucial. He had to let go of one of the scenes. The other scene he insisted on was approved at first. He did reshoots and additional photography in July. The new scene was shot at BR in October. Okay, so if I'm getting this right, the other scene he insisted on was approved at first. So, would that then mean that it was later axed? In which case, the budgetary reason thing doesn't make sense. I mean, unless I'm understanding that wrong. But I don't know why he would feel the need to write at first it was approved, which leads me to believe that it was later not approved after it was filmed. I don't know. Okay, continuing. The ending that will blow your mind was a part of this. Older actors were included like Hayden, Ewan, and Samuel, and anyone who wasn't animated. The Force Ghosts were meant to be voices because they shot that footage on camera. The actors were in costumes. Rey was supposed to be surrounded by the Force Ghosts to serve as some sort of barrier between her and the Sith surrounding them. Okay, so let's unpack this here. The ending that will blow your mind, which is all of the Force Ghosts, was part of this big, important thing from J.J. Abrams. A big, important thing that he was denied by Disney because of budgetary reasons. But they filmed it with everyone in costume. So, how can it be removed or not even done at all because of budgetary reasons if it was actually done with all the actors on set in costume? Doesn't make sense. And also, this includes everyone who wasn't animated. So all of the Clone Wars and Rebels and whatever were in that scene as far as their voices go, they weren't in there at all. And a whole big thing was the fans were excited that you'd have some animated characters in this movie, at least in some capacity, which there were. So I don't understand. I don't know. This is ridiculous. Let's continue on. My source thinks, but can't 100% confirm that this is because of China. It's an office talk of sorts. Some VFX people claim they got a list of approved shades of blue they could use on the Luke Force Ghosts. Cutting this out was when the bad blood turned into a nightmare for JJ because the movie he was making was suddenly unrecognizable to him in almost every way. So, gosh, this doesn't make sense. So, China... Okay, so let's unpack this even more. So it wasn't Disney that... It's no longer Disney that cited budgetary reasons. This is actually because of China. In an office talk of sorts. And then they were given a list of approved shades of blue that they could use for Force Ghosts on the already filmed footage. But then it was yanked because Disney cited budgetary reasons. My source knows JJ well enough to know that he's not the yelling type. Okay, so this source is now heavily involved with the film and knows J.J. Abrams personally. Why would they say any of this? I know in the beginning it says, oh, it's because they feel that J.J. had been wronged, but they would not risk their neck if they were close to J.J. I don't know. Okay, so apparently in a meeting he yelled something along the lines of, why don't you just put directed and written by Lucasfilm then? My source wasn't present for that exchange, but knows some who were there. Okay, so that's second hand. That's third hand, because this is an unnamed important source who heard this from other people that J.J. Abrams apparently yelled in a meeting. And I don't doubt that there might have been some yelling during this movie, you know, like during the production of the movie, because that happens. But the fact that this specifically happened with all these other details from this source, come on. Disney demanded they shoot some scenes that would have things in it for merchandise. Okay, this is when we see a pattern here of all of these things talked about from this source are wrapped around what we are already talking about or know about. The lies are coming from established things and not new information. So, you know how a lot of people were upset about the They Fly Now clip? No one liked that. It was like the first clip that they showed, everyone hated it. So what do they make sure to mention in these bullet points? The They Fly Now clip. And this type of thing, if you've been subscribed to me for a while and you follow the Transformers movies, because all my subscribers know that this has mainly been a Transformers channel in the past following the production of the movies. There has been multiple people that have made posts like this that say that they know people who were involved in the movie and they have all this insider information, and it's always based around things that we are already talking about. And that is why this is total BS. This is someone wanting to get some stuff going on the internet. They fuel off of this. So, to continue on here, They Fly Now is one of them, okay, one of the scenes for merchandise, and it's also JJ's least favorite scene, of course it is. At a November screening of a 237 cut, he cringed, groaned, and laughed when the scene was on. Okay, so not only is this person heavily involved, but he was there during a screening of a 237 cut of the film. So this is an extremely important person that worked heavily on this movie. They wouldn't be talking about this if they were that important. My source says that JJ was most likely not joking when he said, "You're right," in the interview where they asked him about the Rise of Skywalker criticism. Okay, now this is taken out of context here. JJ didn't say you're right for disliking the Rise of Skywalker. He said that you can't please everyone, and he phrased it in that such a way. Okay, now, and mind you, all of this stuff is coming from someone who posts on a Reddit thread, or a Reddit topic called Saltier Than Crate, which is a Reddit topic where people just hate on The Last Jedi. And this person has posted numerous times about their hate for The Last Jedi and recent Star Wars stuff. And this is the person that gets the information. So, let's continue. JJ's original early November cut was 3 hours and 2 minutes long. Okay, so we're talking a month before the movie comes out. They knocked off 40 minutes of the movie. Seriously, they knocked off 40 minutes of a movie a month before it came out. That means all the VFX, editing, and music was all done, and they just axed 40 minutes of the movie. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Now, in January, JJ suggested that they turn this into 2 films. My source told me this well before Terrio mentioned it in an interview a couple of days ago. Okay, so this is another tactic. The source told him before it was mentioned, but we didn't know this information until after it came from an official source. This is just how they do it. They bend your perception to think like, oh, I knew this beforehand, but I'm just telling you this now, after someone important said it. Just making you think like, oh, they knew this information. But they didn't. When Disney said no, JJ was content with making this 3 hours long. Oh, when Disney said no, JJ was content with making this 3 hours long. So, okay, so a month ago, it was 3 hours long. Over a period of 9 months, JJ started realizing that that one by one, his ideas and whole scenes were being thrown out the window or entirely altered by people who have no business meddling with the creatives. So this means the people in suits. So how are they making these decisions without J.J. Abrams knowing? Is my question. They were not on the same page when it came to creative decisions, and it became obvious that Disney had an agenda in addition to wanting to please shareholders. Disney could afford messing up 9 for the sake of the bigger picture when it came to protecting things unrelated to 9, which I assume they mean Marvel. So let's ruin DC. The cut JJ eventually and hesitantly agreed to in early December was 2 hours and 37 minutes long. It wasn't the cut we saw, which he wouldn't have approved of, and which is 2 hours and 22 minutes long. Apart from the Force Ghosts, there were other crucial and emotional scenes missing. The cut they released looked chopped and taped back together with weak Scotch tape. Those were JJ's exact quoted words, apparently. Who talks like that? You'd say, oh, that was patched together with Scotch tape. Who says weak Scotch tape? I mean, that's just the little things right there. When people make these things up, it just doesn't sound right. Now here we go about Rose. The movie opened with Rey's training. Her first scene with Rose was shortly after Rey damaged BB-8 during the training. Rose made a silly joke about how Poe is going to kill her for damaging BB-8. Now, if this is true, now we did see some images of Rose with Rey at that location. So, again, using things that we already know. And this would kind of make sense as a thing that would be cut if this was even true. So no problem there. There was a moment where Rey took a minute to process what just happened when she saw that vision during her training. She looked distressed and worried. Okay, again, if this is true, I don't see any problem with that being cut. The next scene was noise as the Falcon was landing and Rey runs over there, which happens in the movie. Those two women who kissed at the end were visible in this shot, and they were holding hands. One of them ran toward the Falcon as it landed. Again, if this is true, it seems like something that could easily be cut, because I'm sure it was something where it focused on them and then moved on to the important scene. So it's just chopping off the fat of the scene. Moving on. Kylo on Mustafar's scene was 2 minutes longer. There was a moment where Kylo seemed a bit dizzy and his vision was shown as blurry for a second, almost as if time half stopped while everyone in the background was slow-mo fighting. Kylo hears Vader's breathing, then shakes his head, and time goes back to moving at a normal pace, and he jumps right back into the battle, the scene from the trailer where he knocks the guy down, which did end up in the movie later. Well, it ended up in the movie in that scene, but 2 minutes longer for that scene? I don't think so. They cut some of the scenes from the lightspeed skipping segment. Kashyyyk, Naboo, and Kamino were some of the planets that were cut. That just seems like a lot of lightspeed skipping that didn't need to be there in the first place. And those 3 planets are very well-known Star Wars planets, so again, something easy to make up. The scene where the TIE fighters are chasing them through the iceberg, those corridors were inspired by a video game JJ used to play in the 90s called Rebel Assault 2, the 3rd level in the game with the tunnels on Endor specifically. That's so dang specific. That's so weird. Jano was confirmed to be Lando's daughter. That was easily inferred during the movie. Didn't really need to continue that anymore because it would just been last-second stuff in the movie, like, oh, you're my daughter. Yeah, you kind of left that open. I liked how that was in the movie. Rey not only healed Kylo's face scar, but she killed Kylo when she healed Ben. Kylo ceased to exist when Rey healed him. My source mentioned that some people assume it was Han Solo who healed him, but that isn't true, and that wasn't Han Solo. That was Leia using her own memories as well as Ben's to create a physical manifestation of her own thoughts, blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's nonsense. The late November cut, the last cut JJ approved of, had scenes. This is the 3 hour long one. Had scenes with Rose and Rey still. JJ wanted to give her a more meaningful arc. Disney felt that was too risky too. Okay, Disney did not feel that it was too risky. Because, in fact, a lot of people who probably disliked Rose in The Last Jedi probably would have wanted her to be redeemed as a character. So, adding her as a character in more of a better role would be good, and I don't see why Disney would have a problem with that. My source mentioned that Chris said that it was because of the Leia scenes, but this is only partially true because she had 4 other scenes, including 2 with Rey Daisy that Leia was not in. See, I don't know. Finn wanting to tell Rey something was always meant to be Force sensitivity. In the 3 hour cut, he used the Force. This was replaced by CGI BB-8. See, this is things that we already know about, Finn having the Force and building their lives on top of that. Okay, this one's weird. Babu Frick was nearly cut because some execs at Disney thought he would be the new Jar Jar. So you're telling me some Disney exec thought that Babu Frick, who was in the movie for 2 minutes, would be the next Jar Jar? And how do you even get a Jar Jar? I can't even talk about this. This is ridiculous. Oh, and this part was funny too. He was JJ's idea and was created in collaboration with some artists and puppeteers. Well, of course it was created with some artists and puppeteers. The artists made the concept art and the puppeteers do the puppet. What kind of information is that? There were a bunch of scenes where Rey and Kylo went through quiet moments of reflection to deal with what they were going through. On her part, her going through the realization that there's something sinister about her past, him going through regret and remorse but trying to shut it out. My source said that the Kylo scenes were especially amazing because of Adam's performance and how he managed to portray that inner turmoil. It provided much more context and added a deeper meaning to both his battle with Rey and the final redemption arc at the end. It didn't happen so suddenly, and that it was more structured than what we got. I mean, I didn't feel like it happened suddenly, but a bunch of quiet moments. A lot of these things I can't even talk about because they don't make sense. The Kylo Ren scene where he dies was at least 4 minutes long. 4 minutes longer. 4. There's no way it was 4 minutes. With more dialogue, Ben was supposed to die. He was always supposed to die. Source also added that if he wasn't, then that might have been in an earlier draft. The first draft they read, including Lando, the first few didn't. The kiss and death were not part of the reshoots. It was a part of the re-editing. So it was filmed. So how can it be a part of the re-editing if it was probably meant to be there in the first place? Gosh, this is tiring just reading it. JJ was against the kiss, and this was Disney's attempt to please both sides of the fandom. Come on. JJ was not happy where The Last Jedi took the story. He was gutted over the final result. Star Wars means a lot to him. And when he found out that he was blindsided with the cut they presented, he said, "What the F?" when Kylo was fighting the Knights of Ren at the end and the Williams music was used for it. It was not what he wanted at all. He seemed to think it was out of place. How is a director not in charge of the music? Why would a studio head be like, nope, that's not the music we're using for this scene? JJ's cut still exists and will always exist. We most likely will never see it unless somebody accidentally leaks it. Okay, what higher up who worked on the movie, who knows JJ well, thinks that there is a legitimate chance that maybe someone will accidentally leak an extra 40 minutes of a Star Wars movie? No one would say that, because it would never, ever happen. And then they add something at the end where Disney was originally against having a black male lead when you had the white female lead. And then also they weren't a big fan of Finn and Poe being in a gay relationship. See, this is everything that has been discussed and argued about online. And that is how they get people to believe this. Because it's stuff that they're already angry about. And they will latch onto this as proof that they are right. So, that's my rundown of this. I probably sound exhausted by the end of this, because I am. This is just ridiculous talking about. I'm going to have to trim this video. This is how long is this video? So those are my thoughts. Yeah.